So welcome, everyone. We're so delighted to have you with us today. I'm Dr. Leah Jeanette, and I'm going to introduce those who are with us as well. But we are here to talk really about our research ethics concentration in our MA program. And kind of what we've titled this is ensuring ethical research, which, is always a goal, but like how we accomplish that is, a great discussion point. And I have the concentration director, Dr. Marsha Michie, with me today. So just to introduce myself a little bit more, I'm the Assistant Director of Education for Bioethics and Medical Humanities here in our Department of Bioethics at Case Western Reserve. I'm also the Director of our Master's in Bioethics and Medical Humanities program. I'm also a Senior Research Associate in the department, so I fill lots of different roles. Teaching, administration, and I'm also a clinical ethicist at one of our nearby hospitals, university hospitals. I should also add I'm an alum of the master's program, so I think I have sometimes a unique perspective being an alum. So I want to introduce Dr. Marsha Michie. She is the co-director of the PhD program, but also the director of our research ethics concentration in the MA program. Dr. Michie, I'd love for you to introduce yourself a little bit more, maybe share a little bit about your background and, your interest in research ethics and kind of the work you do.
Sure. So I don't have a degree in bioethics. I have a degree in anthropology. That's my PhD. And then I started working in bioethics sort of late in my PhD program. I did a couple of postdocs, and now I'm here at Case in the bioethics department and spend most of my time doing research on issues in biomedical ethics and the ethics of health and healthcare, and the research that helps ensure that. And then I also, of course, teach and direct these two programs. I've been here for about 7 years now, so it's been a great experience to be here at Case Western.
Thank you so much. So we're going to talk a little bit about Case Western Reserve and the School of Medicine, which is where our department is located, just to kind of give you a frame of reference for our university. And then we'll talk more specifically about the MA program and specifically the research ethics concentration component of the MA program. We'll end with application process and deadlines, student assistantships, financial aid, and save time for Q&A. So if you have questions, feel free to submit them through the Q&A feature here on Zoom. If you're watching the recording, of course, you can email us your questions at bioethics@case.edu. So Case Western Reserve has several different schools, obviously, like most universities. We are located in the School of Medicine. Our School of Medicine has great accomplishments associated with it. As you can see, we're number 1 in Ohio and number 24 in the US for medical schools. Those are all different metrics and things like that. But I think what's really important to kind of think about is really also the research that we're doing. The Leiden, these are a couple of different rankings for research. We're number 8 in the US from the Leiden ranking, impact ranking, and the Blue Ridge Institute has us at 18, has us at 22 in NIH funding. And the reason why I'm really highlighting that, and Dr. Michie can feel free to jump in and add to these, it reflects the amount of research we're doing. We are a research active school of medicine, but also across the university. And that also means our Department of Bioethics is conducting research, participating in research, advising for research. There's a lot of ways that our department is involved in this research. And that's at the university. It's in affiliation with our hospitals and partners across the US and around the world. And so I use these more to illustrate how active we are in research. And Dr. Michie, you are one of those who you do grants work, you do research studies, and you collaborate and partner with lots
Sure,
of different folks.
absolutely. The majority of my research, and I spend the majority of my time on research, and most of that is funded by the National Institutes of Health. A lot of my research is funded by the National Human Genome Research Institute because I work in that area. We people in our department are funded by private funders as well. and by the National Science Foundation and other terrific funding that we get to do the research that we do. And then we, of course, collaborate and advise people in other parts of the university that are getting that funding. We work really closely with the Clinical and Translational Science Collaborative here that's federally funded. And we work with lots of other people in different departments in different schools who do research that are, doing things that are related to biomedical ethics that are really allow us to work in a broad range of fields from clinical care to research to really cutting edge technology. So it's really a fun job to have.
So, I'm going to shift us to talk more specifically just about bioethics and medical humanities for a bit, and then we're going to dive into like the research ethics discussion. So, one of the things that, and Dr. Mickey, you probably get asked the same thing of like, why study bioethics and medical humanities? What are you studying? Why study it? Why does this matter? And I think one of the big kind of overarching takeaways that I think about a lot is that healthcare impacts all of us. Health impacts all of us. And we want to see ethical activity, ethical responsibility in health and healthcare. And there's a lot of follow-up questions that can then be asked. We see changes in technology and science, and our world is constantly changing. And so it results in big ethical, humanities focused questions. Things like should we and how we intervene? What kind of values inform policy and practice? Can we, and frankly, should we ensure justice and respect for persons in research and clinical practice? That's a lot of the work that you do, Dr. Mickey, is really thinking about the ethics that's going on in research and informing policy and those kind of things. And these are not easy questions to answer.
Oh, by no means. They're really complicated and they require not just bioethicists and folks who work in medical humanities, but people in the social sciences, people in clinical fields, people in basic science. We all have to work together to work on these issues.
So then, more specifically, why does it matter that we think about ethical issues in things like biomedical research and regulations? Why, frankly, why?
Well, it's hard to imagine that anybody who would tune into a webinar like this would think it's not important to do
Right.
your research ethically. But what does that actually mean? 50 years ago, we thought about this very, very differently than we do today. Our ideas that we have today about making sure that we honor people's autonomy are very different than they were just, not that long ago, really. We're a pretty young field. Our ideas about how we honor communities in research, like Native American communities, for example, or minoritized communities of various kinds. Why does it matter that our clinical research studies have a hugely bigger representation from white men than from women or minoritized folks? That matters a lot, and it matters not just for justice issues or just because we think it's socially the right thing to do, but also because the science is not as good when you don't include all the people who might be affected by these issues. We shouldn't be burdening people with research when they're not going to see the benefits of it. And we also shouldn't try to extrapolate from one tiny group of people, who may be very similar in many ways, socioeconomically, genetically, whatever, to a much greater group of people, because that can cause them harms. So we think about all of those things in research, in addition to just meeting regulations, making sure that people are informed about what they are participating in, making sure that animal studies are done thoughtfully and ethically, making sure that when we do our science, the questions that we're asking are are cognizant of what their social implications might be. These are all really, really important things to do. And as I say, we can't do them alone. We work with scientists, we work with clinicians, we work with social scientists um, to do all of these things. Philosophers, theologians, all of us are thinking together about these issues. And bioethics is an inherently interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary field.
So that leads us right into kind of how does
I
this?
didn't even know the slide was coming, Dr. Jeanette. So I want you to be impressed that I
I am.
previewed it.
But what you said is absolutely true, because the question that comes to mind is then why should we like why not only why do we study this, but how does it actually help someone's career path to have this education, you know, during their career? And it goes with exactly what you said. It's interdisciplinary, it's multidisciplinary, it's interprofessional. There are so many people that are contributing to this discussion in this field, and it helps to enhance so many different areas. And so bioethics and medical humanities and research ethics can be really important. And then specifically for our students, it helps to launch them into the next phase, into their professional careers. We have a number of students who do our research ethics concentration, and we'll talk about what that specifically looks like within the program in a few minutes. But it can help launch them into doing regulatory work. We have students who go on to be IRB specialists or run IRBs, or they do research as they're in medical school or PhD programs. Um, they think about research regulation as lawyers and in the different areas that you can kind of think about. But we also have students who do our program who we like to identify as like undecided. They're looking for discernment in their career path, and they may just simply have an interest in research ethics. And so by focusing on this concentration, it can help with that discernment in what career path they're going to take. They know they want to be in research, or they know they want to be in health, or they know they want to be in policy, but what are the actual career availabilities based on the information that you're learning and experiencing through the program in this field? So our master's program, we are going to be celebrating 29 years this fall. So we've been around for a long time. We are a one-year program. So most students do our program full time, basically 2 semesters, fall and spring. But we do have students who may be part-time, they're working, they are returning students, so more like the non-traditional. So part-time is available. The program is really unique in our curriculum. So we have 30 credits, and we'll talk about the specific courses in just a moment. But essentially, half of them are focused on electives, which allows for customization in the career path that a student is heading towards. And that's really important to us because bioethics and medical humanities is so interdisciplinary. We need to be able to adequately address student needs in our curriculum. And so that's really important to us. We have personalized advising for each student. So your advisor is going to be someone who is interested in similar areas of bioethics and medical humanities. And then we have dual degree options for those who are interested as well. So this kind of outlines our curriculum. What I want to kind of highlight are the 2 columns. One is the traditional column. So by default, everyone is in what we consider our traditional program. So you're completing the Foundations in Bioethics and Medical Humanities 1, Clinical Ethics Rotations, Foundations in Bioethics and Medical Humanities 2, and the capstone. Everyone is going to take that regardless if you're in the traditional program or you're in the concentrations. But when you look through the traditional program, the rest of it is basically electives. So you get to decide what areas you want to study, what topics you want to cover. Versus if you compare that to the research ethics concentration, it really allows you to customize those electives towards the research ethics courses. So you have research ethics and regulation, you have a research ethics journal club, and a research ethics practicum. And so those are going to fill some of the slots of the electives. You still have the opportunity for electives that are going to be related to research ethics as well. So Dr. Michie, do you want to just give a brief overview of kind of the courses that students in the research ethics concentration are going to be taking or thinking about?
Sure. So the core of research ethics, I guess, is the research ethics and regulations course, and that course is currently being taught by a bioethicist and by the person who is in charge of the regulatory IRB structures for the university. And together they have this terrific really view of ethics and regulations, which sometimes match and sometimes don't. Those two things aren't always exactly the same. And so that's a great course, and you cover all kinds of topics in human subjects research, in other kinds of research, in understanding what the big issues in research ethics are and sort of the classic cases in that area. We have the journal club, and you saw in that chart that it goes over 2 semesters, but it's actually only 1.5 credits. We meet several times in the fall and then a few times in the spring, and it's intended to be a fairly low lift. It's a lot of fun. That's my course. We have students who join the course who aren't in the research ethics concentration because it's just really enjoyable to be able to look around at brand new literature. What's really happening? What's a hot topic in this space? Pick out an article. Students choose the article. One or two students will lead it. They'll choose an article. They'll come up with questions just to discuss the article with, and I help them with that. One of the most rewarding things for me is at the beginning of the year, I help them a lot with that because it's very um, maybe confusing for them. They're not exactly sure how they're going to do this. And by the end of the year, where we are now, they're pros. They've got it. They know exactly what they're doing. And they're leading discussions in really, really confident ways, which is what you really want to see when you get out of graduate school, that you've got that confidence to lead an academic discussion or a public discussion in a way that's really confident, and you know that you're addressing important issues. So that's a bunch of fun. The research ethics practicum is a requirement, but in a sense, it's a little bit of an elective because you get to choose what you do. It's not assigned to you. It's something that we work with you on to make sure that it's a topic that's important to you, it's relevant to your interests, and we'll place you somewhere. We might place you in the IRB. We might place you in the conflicts of interest office. We might place you in a university sort of program that's working on a research uh, sort of area that has big ethical issues, and you're helping them with that. You might end up working with a faculty member on a publication. It just depends on what is important to you. And this, of course, is in addition to your clinical ethics hours that you'll do in the beginning. So you get this nice mix of clinical ethics, sort of practical experience, and research ethics practical experience over the course of just 1 year. And then, of course, your electives, which we're pretty open about. It just depends on what's important to you.
So I think what's really interesting, and Dr. Michie, I'd love for you to talk more about kind of these various topics, but research ethics and like what you guys cover in the journal club, what's covered in the courses is a wide variety of topics. So we have topics that are focused on like the ethics of an research, but then we also have like ethical questions in these specific areas of research. Um,
Right. So how do you do research ethically, but also topics that just are inherently ethically complex, like gene-edited babies? And you can click ahead to see some of the other topics. Brain organized, so growing tiny little replicas of, or models of brains in a petri dish. There's lots of ethical issues there, as you might imagine. Fetal tissue research. We discussed at the time when there were a lot of legal questions and policy questions around fetal tissue research. There were some restrictions being placed on it. So we talked about that. That was a lot of really interesting discussion. And then I think there's one more. Oh, yeah, prisoners participating in clinical research. So this is something that there are restrictions on. So, but on the other hand, are we unfairly excluding people from research? Social media, everybody can relate to that, the privacy that you do or don't have when you're online. Genetically modified crops, homelessness research. How do you do good community engaged research? That comes up a lot in our research ethics journal club, is thinking about what does it mean to do ethical research with communities that maybe haven't been engaged with, and we've just kind of helicoptered in and out in the past. So that's actually that picture is of a street in San Francisco that I used to drive down quite a lot when I worked at University of California, San Francisco. Um, And that's what the homeless village there looks like. It's amazing. In one of the richest cities in the world, right next to one of the richest neighborhoods in the world. Really amazing. Are those all the pictures? Do we have
I
any
think
more?
so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
I think
but a great array of issues.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is by having such a diverse example of the areas that we have to think about the ethics and the research and how we do these things, as you can see that it's much more than just bench science research. It's much like that is important, right? Some of these examples had to do with the things we're doing in a wet lab, but it's more than that. It's as Dr. Michie said, it's about community. It's about engagement with vulnerable populations, and so I think this gives a really good illustration of the variety of areas.
For sure, because bench research is really important. One of my big areas, though, is what we call translational research. How do we take that bench research and translate it into something that really affects people every day in the clinic, in their personal health and public health? And so we try to span that whole gamut and with the issues that we talk about.
So there's two things I want to just quickly highlight about our master's program that's all of our students have the opportunity to participate in, regardless if you're in the concentrations or not. One is our clinical ethics rotations. So all of our students participate in at least 80 hours of clinical ethics rotations in the fall. Those who are in the research ethics concentrations, as we talked about, do the practicum in the spring instead. If you're not in that concentration, though, you would be doing 160 hours, so another semester of rotations. And what's great about this is it allows students to get into the hospitals to see what clinical ethics looks like at the bedside, in committee meetings, one-on-one with healthcare professionals who are providing care and participating in these discussions. I think it's really important how we think about this. One of the areas, though, that there you can see this overlap between clinical ethics and research ethics is students are required to attend an IRB meeting, an institutional research board meeting, and it allows them to see how studies are approved in the clinical setting. What are the discussions around patients and those things? So it does give you some perspective on research ethics, even in the clinical setting. And then another area that we're really proud of in our curriculum is our short-term study abroad electives. These are 3-credit electives students can take while they're in the program. They fill in an elective slot. We have courses that go lots of different places. We're in the midst of kind of retooling our courses for this upcoming year. And so we may have different courses in future years that are listed here. But what they do a good job of getting you in the city, in the country, interacting with experts in the field. These courses have different topics, they have different focuses, and it really allows you to see not only the discussion of ethics that's different country to country or culture to culture, but just the overall approach to healthcare and health is different. And it makes for a really fascinating 1 week or 2 week course, depending on what you're taking. So just to kind of wrap us up, if you're interested in applying to the program, we do require some application materials, transcripts from your undergrad or graduate institutions. Unofficial is fine for the application review, but once you are admitted to the program and you're going to join us, you would need an official transcripts. We ask for a resume or CV, 2 letters of recommendation, one of which we would like to be from some type of professor or instructor, a statement of purpose. What we're looking for in that is your interest in bioethics and medical humanities and how could it potentially fit into your career path. Of course, you don't have to have it all figured out in the statement of purpose and you can change your direction, and that's totally fine. Test scores, graduate test scores are optional. If you are an international student, there are some additional requirements if you're going to join the program after admission. And for students who are current case undergrads for the combined bachelor's master's degree, what used to be called IGS, we do require a PPOS form. You can reach out to me for that. What I think it's important to note is you do not have to know that you're going to be doing the research ethics concentration when you're admitted or even applying to the program. You can decide that as you're thinking about course registration. That's really when you have to make those tough decisions. For those who always ask about financial aid, we of course have traditional financial aid means. and tuition information is available through Graduate Studies. But I do want to quickly highlight our student assistantships. So this is an opportunity for students to get involved in teaching, research, or administrative roles within the department, and in exchange, they receive a tuition waiver. So anywhere from $5,000 to $12,000, that's split over the academic year. But specifically, there are students who really want to get involved in bioethics research that our faculty are doing. And Dr. Michie has students that have joined her teams over the years to help contribute to the research projects that are ongoing. And it could be anywhere along that process or anywhere along the research in the process. So it could be launching a new study, it could be in the midst of interviewing and transcription and coding, or it could be kind of wrapping up a study. So it's amazing where students can kind of get involved in that process. Deadlines. So the next big deadline we have is for the combined bachelor's master's degree. That is April 1st. Our priority 2 deadline for traditional MA applicants is priority 2 is May 15th. What that means is if you apply by May 15th, anyone who's applied before that deadline is eligible to apply for student assistantships. When you submit your master's application, you will automatically receive the student assistantship application, which ultimately is due on June 1st. Our final deadline is August 1st, and we start our new academic year at the end of August, which right now seems so far away, but it's going to come very quickly. So we encourage you to get your applications in sooner rather than later so that you can make decisions and plan for moving and all of those things as necessary. So I want to open us up just in the last two or 3 minutes for questions if anyone would like to submit questions through the Q&A feature. I know we had one submitted ahead of time, so while folks are thinking about their questions, I do want to ask Dr. Michie, so someone had submitted a question that was really asking to touch on equity in clinical trials, gaining representative patients for these trials, kind of, et cetera. And it's a really good question. I don't know that we can answer it fully here, but it's something that we talk about a lot in the program and in this concentration.
We do for sure. And I mentioned a little bit about that earlier, but it's funny because we were just talking about this in one of my classes yesterday in ethics of genetics and genomics, because that's an area where it really, really matters, right? If you don't have a good representation of genomes, then when people from underrepresented backgrounds go in and are offered genetic testing, it might not be as accurate for them. It actually hurts that population not to have good representation. On the other hand, people worry about exploitation and overburdening populations, somehow placing pressure on them. And this is something that's come up a lot, particularly with Native American communities. There are moratoria in some Native American communities on genetic research. But, it's interesting to see how you have to balance this issue of burdens and mistrust, justified mistrust of healthcare institutions by minoritized groups, by people who have lower socioeconomic status, may have less trust of science, may have less trust of universities and healthcare institutions. But on the other hand, the more representation you have in research, the more you're likely for you and your kids and your families and communities to reap the benefits of that research later. So it's a big issue, and it is complicated. You're right. We're not going to answer it today, but that is something that we talk about a lot in this program, and especially in research ethics.
Yeah. Thank you. One, and I'm not seeing any new questions, but one question that we get asked pretty consistently that I would love for us to just quickly answer is what makes our master's program unique? Because there are a number of programs for master's in bioethics and medical humanities. And I think it's an important question to kind of think about as people are figuring out where to apply. Dr. Michie, what would you say to kind of answer that question just briefly?
You may have other answers. I have a couple. One is that we we regularly have students say that one of the things that draws them to our program is that hands-on experience that they get in clinical ethics rotations and research ethics practicum. That is tremendously valuable. It's not just sitting in classes. It's not just a lecture class where you're taking notes. you're actively participating in seeing how ethics really happens in hospital settings, in university settings, in the community, and it's really, really a valuable experience. And the other thing I would say, and I don't think I'm exaggerating at all when I say this. We're one of the finest bioethics departments in the entire world. We have a terrific faculty. We've recently hired 3 new faculty who are all fabulous. We have a tremendous diversity of disciplinary backgrounds, from literature to theology to medicine to nursing to law to social science. It's amazing the breadth of our faculty. And I don't, education is a cornerstone of this department. I don't know anybody in our faculty who doesn't put things aside to make sure that they're available for students when they, need help or want advice or just want to know, how did you get into this field? I have meetings with students all the time like that. So I think that's a really valuable thing.
Yeah, you actually used the word to me that comes to mind, and that's breadth. So when our program was created 29 years ago, we focused on depth, right? Making sure students are getting the foundation, the intensity of information and training that they need. But I would say in the last 10 years, because we have the depth there, we've been able to focus on the breadth of the program and the department as a whole. And I think that makes us a very strong program. So students are, as you said, getting that clinical experience, getting the practicum experience, but they're also able to study abroad, and we do that really well because we've been able to take our time in how we craft those courses, um, creating research opportunities for students, and of course the myriad of expertise that our faculty have in all different areas. So I think that that word breadth really kind of rings true of what we've been doing in the last 5 to 10 years with the master's program because we already have the depth.
For sure.
So,
Absolutely.
all right. Well, I will wrap us up. Thank you, Dr. Michie, so much for joining us. If anyone has questions, whether you're here with us live or watching the recording, email us bioethics@case.edu. We can set up one-on-one meetings. I can connect you with the other people that you're interested in speaking with, even current students. So we'd love to hear from you. If you're not sure if this program is right for you, we can definitely talk about the potentiality of how this program can fit into your career path and almost do like an application pre-screening. Um, so thank you so much, everyone. Dr. Michie, again, thank you so much for
Thanks for
joining
inviting
us.
me. It's really great to talk to you about the program as always, and of course, I'm happy to answer questions from folks over email later.
All right. I hope everyone has a good day and thank you so much.